Before the Deluge, decoding the ancient world before the flood. In the earliest pages of human history, before the fierce storms and floods covered the earth, there existed a world that we can now only imagine through the pages of the Bible. This was a mysterious era, recorded in the book of Genesis, where humanity not only lived with extraordinary lifespans, but also maintained a profound and close connection with the Creator. But what led to the catastrophic change, the Great Flood, that wiped out all life on the surface of the earth? The story of the fallen angels, Satan's rebellion, and the fateful decisions of Adam, Eve, Cain, Abel, and Noah laid the groundwork for this tragedy. Join me as we delve into these mysteries, exploring the strange characters and dramatic events that forever altered the course of human history. Figures such as Adam and Eve, their sons Cain and Abel, and the eventual savior of humanity, Noah, offer us brief glimpses into this ancient life. Although their lives are steeped in myth and mystery, they possess a relatability that transcends time. It is within these narratives that we begin to understand the forces that led to the Great Flood, forces that were not merely human but also divine and demonic in nature. Central to these forces were Satan and the fallen angels, whose rebellion against God set the stage for the flood. The origins of this rebellion can be traced back to an event that occurred even before the creation of the world itself. This event is hinted at in the book of Job, where God reveals a cosmic occurrence that took place long before the earth was formed. In Job 38:4-7, God poses a series of rhetorical questions to Job. Where were you when I laid the foundations of the earth? Tell me if you understand. Who marked off its dimensions? Surely you know. Who stretched a measuring line across it? On what were its footings set? Or who laid its cornerstone while the morning stars sang together and all the angels shouted for joy? These verses suggest that the morning stars and sons of God, angelic beings of great power and glory, were present at the creation of the earth. They witnessed the establishment of the universe and rejoiced in the magnificence of God's creative power. This passage gives us a glimpse into the pre-creation realm, where these celestial beings existed in harmony with God, celebrating the unfolding of His divine plan. However, this harmony was not to last. Before the flood, there was already a being who had fallen from grace. Although the Bible only briefly references the fallen angels, it makes it clear that the majority of the angels remained faithful to God, never deviating from their intended purpose. Yet, some angels, led by one who was once the most beautiful of all, chose to rebel. These fallen beings, driven by pride and a desire for power, abandoned their heavenly home, a home that was meant to be theirs for eternity. The reason for their fall can be understood in terms of the free will that God bestowed upon all His creatures, angels included. This theme of free will and its consequences is explored in the New Testament, particularly in the book of Jude. Jude 5 and 6 provide a stark reminder of the dangers of abandoning one's divine purpose. Though you already know all this, I want to remind you that the Lord at one time delivered His people out of Egypt, but later destroyed those who did not believe. And the angels who did not keep their positions of authority but abandoned their proper dwelling, these He has kept in darkness, bound with everlasting chains for judgment on the great day. Here, Jude emphasizes that these angels did not maintain their positions of authority, which can be interpreted as their original place in heaven. They were created to dwell in the presence of God, to serve Him, and to carry out His will. Yet, they chose to leave this exalted position, abandoning their divine mandate. This act of rebellion was not just a physical departure from heaven, but a spiritual and moral fall from grace. Leading this rebellion was Satan, the once glorious angel who had transformed into the adversary of God. Disguised as an angel of light, Satan orchestrated what is known as the Great Rebellion, a cosmic conflict in which he and a faction of the heavenly hosts sought to overthrow God's authority. This rebellion was not just a battle for power, it was an attempt to subvert the divine order itself. The result was catastrophic. Satan and his followers were cast out of heaven, their rebellion quashed by the overwhelming might of God's loyal angels. This event is alluded to by Jesus in the Gospels, where he speaks of the glory he shared with the Father before the world existed. "And now, Father, glorify me in your presence with the glory I had with you before the world began." John 17:5. This statement reveals that before the creation of the earth, there was a divine glory shared between the Father and the Son, a glory that existed outside of time and space, in the eternal realm of God. Jesus also recounts witnessing Satan's fall, describing it as a dramatic and sudden event. "I saw Satan fall like lightning from heaven." Luke 10:18. This imagery conveys the speed and severity of Satan's expulsion from the heavenly realm, marking the end of his rebellion and the beginning of his role as the antagonist in the divine narrative. Satan, however, is far more than the caricature of a red-horned devil with a pitchfork. He is an ancient being of immense power, one who uses his spiritual abilities not for good, but for evil. His influence extends far beyond mere physical temptation. He operates in the spiritual realms, manipulating and deceiving humanity to achieve his own ends. The Apostle Paul warns us of this in his letter to the Ephesians, where he writes, "For our struggle is not against flesh and blood, but against the rulers, against the authorities, against the powers of this dark world, and against the spiritual forces of evil in the heavenly realms." Ephesians 6:12. This passage underscores the nature of the spiritual warfare that humanity faces, a battle not against physical enemies but against the organized, malevolent forces of Satan's kingdom. This kingdom is highly structured, with different levels of authority and power, all working to oppose God's plan for humanity. The rebellion in heaven marked the beginning of a cosmic war between two kingdoms, one ruled by God, the Prince of Peace, and the other by Satan, the Prince of Darkness. After their expulsion from heaven, Satan and his followers regrouped, forming a rebel kingdom that would oppose God's authority on earth. This conflict would soon manifest in the physical realm, beginning with the Garden of Eden. In the garden, Satan launched his first attack against God's creation. Viewing the earth as his domain, Satan saw Adam and Eve as intruders, beings created in God's image, placed on earth to establish God's kingdom. To thwart this divine plan, Satan devised a strategy to undermine humanity's destiny. Eden, a paradise of joy and communion with God, became the battleground for this initial conflict. In Genesis 3:8, we read about the tree of the knowledge of good and evil, a tree that God commanded Adam and Eve not to eat from. This tree represented a boundary, a test of obedience and trust in God's wisdom. Satan, however, saw this as an opportunity. He approached Eve with 3 carefully crafted tactics designed to lead her astray. The first tactic was to sow doubt. Did God really say? Genesis 3:1. By questioning God's command, Satan planted the seed of uncertainty in Eve's mind. Next, he used supposition, making Eve question the consequences of her actions. "You will not surely die." Genesis 3:4. This lie directly contradicted God's warning and suggested that God's word could not be trusted. Finally, Satan employed temptation, appealing to Eve's desire for wisdom and power. The result was the fall of humanity, an act of disobedience that would have profound consequences for all of creation. God's disappointment was palpable. Adam and Eve, who had once walked with God in the cool of the day, were now banished from Eden, their relationship with the Creator forever altered. Yet, even in this moment of judgment, God offered a glimmer of hope. He promised that the serpent's head would one day be crushed by the offspring of the woman, a prophecy that pointed to the eventual defeat of Satan and the redemption of humanity. Before expelling Adam and Eve from the garden, God demonstrated his supreme authority over Satan by cursing the serpent and foretelling its ultimate demise. This act of judgment was followed by the first murder in human history, Cain's killing of his brother Abel, Genesis 4. This tragic event illustrates how the original sin committed by Adam and Eve set off a chain reaction of violence and strife that would plague humanity for generations to come. Despite the gravity of Cain's crime, God did not abandon him. Instead, he placed a mark on Cain to protect him from retribution, ensuring that he would not be killed by others. Cain was then condemned to a life of wandering, far from his family and the land he once called home. In his exile, Cain settled in the land of Nod, east of Eden, where he built a city and named it after his son, Enoch. This city became a hub of innovation and culture as Cain's descendants developed new skills and professions. Among them were Jabal, the father of those who live in tents and raise livestock, Jubal, the father of all who play musical instruments, and Tubal-Cain, a master of metallurgy who forged tools from bronze and iron. These developments marked the beginning of civilization, as humanity began to organize itself into communities with specialized roles and occupations. However, Cain's legacy was not without its darker aspects. His descendants inherited his propensity for violence, as evidenced by the boastful declaration of Lamech, who claimed to have killed a man for wounding him. By the time we reach Lamech, the great-great-grandson of Cain, the line of Cain is steeped in bloodshed and corruption. Polygamy, another deviation from God's original design, also emerged in Cain's lineage, further distancing humanity from the divine ideal. In contrast to the line of Cain, God established a new lineage through Seth, another son of Adam and Eve. Seth's descendants, unlike Cain's, were characterized by their humility and devotion to God. They called upon the name of the Lord and sought to live in accordance with His will. It is from this lineage that Noah would eventually emerge, a man chosen by God to carry out His plan for the salvation of humanity. Cain's legacy, while marked by innovation and cultural advancements, was also a testament to the darker side of human nature. His descendants were skilled and creative, yet they were also prone to violence and moral decay. This duality reflects the broader human experience, a struggle between our potential for greatness and our capacity for evil. As the generations passed, the world became increasingly populated, but it also became increasingly corrupt. People turned away from God, indulging in sin and wickedness. They lied, stole, and even committed murder, all while living extraordinarily long lives. In this ancient time, humanity was still closely connected to its origins, and the earth was young and vibrant. Adam and Eve had many children after Cain and Abel, and their descendants spread across the land, forming the first human civilizations. Among Adam's descendants were notable figures such as Enoch, Methuselah, and Noah. These men lived for hundreds of years, with Adam himself reaching the age of 930, Genesis 5:5, and his son Seth living for 912 years, Genesis 5:8. These patriarchs fathered many children and passed down the knowledge of the earth and its creator. However, despite their wisdom and longevity, they were not immune to the temptations and pitfalls of human nature. One of the most remarkable figures in this early history was Enoch, a man who, unlike his contemporaries, maintained a close and faithful relationship with God. Enoch, who was Noah's great-grandfather, is described in the Bible as a man who walked with God, Genesis 5:24. His life was a testament to the possibility of living in close communion with the Creator, even in a world that was increasingly turning away from Him. The story of Enoch is brief, but powerful. At the age of 65, he fathered Methuselah, who would become the oldest man recorded in the Bible, living for 969 years, Genesis 5:27. Enoch, however, did not live as long as his ancestors or descendants. After 365 years, God took him away, sparing him from experiencing death as we know it. This act of divine intervention is often interpreted as a reward for Enoch's faithfulness, a sign that his close relationship with God set him apart from the rest of humanity. Enoch's departure from the earth is significant for several reasons. It represents the first recorded instance of a human being taken to heaven without dying, an event that foreshadows the later biblical accounts of Elijah and, ultimately, the ascension of Jesus. Enoch's life serves as an example of what it means to live for an audience of one, pursuing a deep and personal relationship with God that transcends the concerns of the world. Yet, even as Enoch walked with God, the rest of humanity continued on a path of moral and spiritual decline. The population grew, and with it, the spread of sin and corruption. Tribes and clans formed, each descended from one of the original patriarchs, and these groups spread across the land, establishing new territories and seeking new opportunities. As society became more complex, so too did the need for specialized roles and professions. No longer could everyone be a farmer or a shepherd. New skills and trades emerged, reflecting the growing diversity of human culture. Tubal-Cain, a descendant of Cain, became a master of metallurgy, forging tools and weapons from bronze and iron. His work represented a significant technological advancement, one that would have far-reaching implications for the development of human civilization. At the same time, Jubal, another descendant of Cain, is credited with being the father of all who play musical instruments, indicating the emergence of the arts as an important aspect of human life. These developments illustrate the increasing complexity and sophistication of pre-flood society. However, this burgeoning civilization was not without its flaws. The Bible tells us that as humanity expanded and diversified, so too did the spread of wickedness. The Lord observed that the thoughts of the human heart were only evil all the time, Genesis 6:5. In other words, the moral and spiritual decay that began with the fall of Adam and Eve had reached its zenith, infecting every aspect of human life. The world was filled with violence, corruption, and sin, and the time was approaching when God would take drastic action to cleanse His creation. In this environment of increasing darkness, the figure of the Nephilim emerges, giant beings of immense strength and power who played a significant role in the further corruption of humanity. The Nephilim were not ordinary humans. They were the offspring of the sons of God and the daughters of men, Genesis 6:4, a union that produced beings of extraordinary stature and influence. These giants were revered and feared, but their presence only exacerbated the already dire situation on earth. The Bible describes these Nephilim as heroes of old, men of renown, but their influence was far from positive. Instead of leading humanity back to God, they contributed to the moral decay that was spreading across the earth. Their strength and might made them objects of worship, drawing people further away from the true God who had created them. The world was descending into chaos, and the Nephilim were at the center of this moral and spiritual decline. It was in this context that God looked down upon His creation and saw the extent of humanity's wickedness. The world that He had created and the people He had made in His own image had turned away from Him. They had become consumed by violence, deceit, and self-indulgence. The Bible tells us that the Lord regretted that He had made human beings on the earth, and His heart was deeply troubled. Genesis 6:6. This divine sorrow is a poignant reminder of the depth of God's love for His creation and the pain He feels when that creation goes astray. In response to the overwhelming sinfulness of humanity, God made a difficult decision. He would destroy the world He had created. This decision was not made lightly. but it was necessary to restore order and purity to a world that had become irredeemably corrupt. God declared, "I will wipe from the face of the earth the human race I have created, and with them the animals, the birds, and the creatures that move along the ground, for I regret that I have made them." Genesis 6:7. Yet, even in this moment of impending judgment, there was a glimmer of hope. Amidst the corruption and sin, there was one man who found favor in God's eyes: Noah. Noah was a righteous man, blameless among the people of his time, and he walked faithfully with God. Genesis 6:9. Noah's life stood in stark contrast to the world around him. While others indulged in sin and wickedness, Noah remained faithful to God, living a life of integrity and obedience. Noah's righteousness did not go unnoticed by God. When God decided to cleanse the earth through a great flood, He chose Noah to be the guardian of a new beginning for humanity. God instructed Noah to build an ark, a massive wooden vessel that would serve as a refuge for him, his family, and a remnant of the earth's creatures. The ark was not just a physical structure, it was a symbol of God's mercy and grace, a means of preserving life in the face of impending destruction. Building the ark was no small task. It required years of labor, during which Noah and his family were undoubtedly ridiculed by those around them. Yet, Noah remained steadfast in his faith, following God's instructions to the letter. The ark, as described in Genesis, was a massive structure measuring 300 cubits in length, 50 cubits in width, and 30 cubits in height, equivalent to approximately 450 feet long, 75 feet wide, and 45 feet high. It was to be made of gopher wood, with rooms inside and coated with pitch to make it waterproof. Genesis 6:14-16. In addition to his family, Noah was instructed to bring pairs of every kind of living creature into the ark, to preserve their species during the flood. God specified that Noah should bring 7 pairs of every clean animal and 1 pair of every unclean animal, as well as 7 pairs of every kind of bird. Genesis 7:2-3. This task required meticulous planning and organization, but Noah carried it out with unwavering faithfulness. As the time of the flood approached, Noah and his family entered the ark, and God Himself sealed the door behind them. The heavens opened, and the earth was engulfed in water, a deluge that swept away all life outside the ark. Yet, within this floating sanctuary, Noah's virtues, his faith, obedience, and righteousness, preserved life. From Noah's lineage, a new, purified humanity would emerge, one that would repopulate the earth and carry forward the legacy of faithfulness to God. In a world that had descended into chaos, Noah's light shone most brightly. His life is a testament to the enduring power of virtue and faith in the face of overwhelming darkness. The story of Noah and the flood is not just a tale of destruction. It is a story of redemption and renewal, a reminder that even in the darkest of times, there is hope for those who remain faithful to God. God's covenant with Noah, made after the flood, marked the beginning of a new chapter in the history of humanity. The ark, which had been a vessel of salvation, became a symbol of God's promise never to destroy the earth by flood again. This covenant, sealed with the sign of the rainbow, serves as a reminder of God's mercy and faithfulness, even in the face of human sinfulness. Noah's story is a powerful reminder that no matter how far humanity may stray from God's path, there is always a way back. Through faith, obedience, and a close relationship with God, we can find redemption and renewal, just as Noah did in the ancient world. Thank you for joining me on this journey through the ancient stories of the Bible. I hope that this exploration has brought you not only knowledge, but also inspiration and a deeper understanding of our shared spiritual heritage. As we continue to seek the truth and wisdom within these sacred texts, I pray that God's grace and blessings be upon you and your loved ones. May His light guide your path and His love fill your heart. If you found this content meaningful, I invite you to like this video and subscribe to the channel for more discussions on the rich and powerful narratives within the Bible. Your support helps us to